Well, welcome to Interfaith Insights, Spotlight on Faith. This is the programme where we really look at how our faith helps us to cope during COVID-19. And I have a very, very special guest today, all the way from Seattle in America. Imam Jamal Rahman is the co-founder and a Muslim Sufi minister at the Interfaith Community Sanctuary and the adjunct faculty at Seattle University. And Jamal has an abiding faith in the power of heart-to-heart connections to encompass differences and dissolve prejudices. And since 9/11, 2001, Jamal has been collaborating regularly and actively with Rabbi Ted Falcon, Pastor Lorna McKenzie, and what is lovely knowing affectionately as the Interfaith Amigos, traveling the country, sharing a message of inclusive spirituality. But wonderful, wonderful to have this opportunity to speak with you today, Jamal.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Iain.
So you should know that the Edinburgh Interfaith Association that I have the pleasure to be the director of is the longest running interfaith organisation here. It's around about 30 years old, still relatively young, but in interfaith terms, probably a bit older. So like you, I share this love of interfaith conversations and dialogue, how it can enrich our own spirituality and beliefs. And hopefully today we'll have some interesting conversations around that.
Yes.
I mean, I am interested, just to kick off as how you ended up having that interest in interfaith. Where did it come from?
Yes, several, I think, routes took me there. One is, of course, when I studied Islam, I became aware of many universal verses, like, God has created diversity for a particular cosmic reason that you might come to get to know the other. That's very much an important part of Islam. And in the Quran, it says, it doesn't matter what your religion is. You could be a Jew, a Christian, a Sabian. What takes you to heaven is not your religion. It's your having faith in God and mostly doing righteous deeds. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, I'm a son of diplomats. My parents were diplomats, so they traveled all over the world. So naturally, I went with them.
That's
and my
very handy in interfaith work to be diplomatic, I think.
That's right. You by the hazardness of your occupation, you have to be in interfaith. But they were very progressive parents, very loving parents. So we, meaning me and my siblings, we have attended many churches, maybe more than Christians, because my father was posted in many Christian countries, temples, and other houses of worship. So I learned very early this wonderful insight that, there's a story in Islam that Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century, he would have Jews and Christians visit him to talk about different aspects of the situation there. And sometimes the conversations went on for a long time. And he would say, I beg you, do your Shabbat, do your Sunday service in the mosque. It's simply a place consecrated to God. So I got that understanding that a place of worship is simply a place consecrated to God. And of course, 9/11 happened in America. That swung open the need for interfaith. But these are some of the factors that really made me have a love of connecting with other faiths.
So was 9/11 really a game changer in some ways? Was it the positive thing that came out of that was that maybe did mosques become more open in other places of worship?
You see, in America,
open to dialogue.
Yes, I would say so. Of course, I had dedicated my life to doing the work of interfaith before 9/11, but when 9/11 happened, it became very clear that it's not just a matter of hospitality, it's a matter of our survival and how little we know just in terms of religious literacy about other religions. Yes, 9/11 made it very clear that we simply have to do this work of interfaith. What it means, nobody knew. It was a road less traveled, but it made clear the need for it, the urgency of it.
And how did your involvement with the Interfaith Sanctuary, you're a co-founder of Interfaith Sanctuary, where did that come from? Where was that idea born?
It's a long story, but I'll keep it short. Some years ago in 1991, when my parents passed away, I suddenly realized I became more real. I want to do what I really, I feel is my calling, and that is to build community. So I started building community after my parents died. And then, to my surprise, it attracted a lot of people. This was in early 1990s. And we had a group called Circle of Love. And we used to meet in my house, different people's homes, for all kinds of programs, worship services, classes. And then out of the blue, as a result of our work, there was a church where the congregants were getting old. It's a beautiful historic church. And I said, cut a long story short, they gifted us that church building.
Wow.
Suddenly from 7 years of doing all these interfaith programs in homes, we now owned a beautiful, small, historic, the oldest church building in Seattle, by the way, 1890. Wow. It's old for this part of the world. It suddenly became ours. So then we renamed that church. First, we called it Interfaith Community Church. Then a few years ago, we have renamed it Interfaith Community Sanctuary. And our goal is, our aspiration is, we want to not just talk about interfaith, we want to live interfaith. What does it mean to foster a living, breathing interfaith community?
That just sounds so incredible. I was reading about the aims of the mission, talking about a place of openness, mutual respect, where each expression of God is valuable. You honor all expressions of God, or welcome individuals from faith traditions, spiritual traditions. Each path is considered valid. You support one another on the spiritual path. It just sounds such a beautiful vision. I wonder, in the reality, how do people from all these traditions come together and coexist so happily in the sanctuary?
It does sound like a utopia.
It does sound like utopia when I read it. For me, it does, I have to say.
But you see, we have two main goals in our sanctuary. One is, we really want to help one another in doing this, what we call the inner inconvenient work.
Right.
Spiritual programs, spiritual practices where we transform our ego, open up our hearts to become a better human being. That's one aspect. The other aspect is, let's be of service. So if I may tell you, we have different kinds of congregants.
Right.
So I represent one type of congregant where I'm rooted in Islam, but I'm open to the beauty and wisdom of other traditions. And I find from my own experience, this waters my Islamic roots, makes me a better Muslim, a more developed human being, which is why we say interfaith is not about conversion. It is about completion. That's just one category. The other category, Iain, which probably is the largest, that's none of the above.
Okay.
That's in mystical terms, we say bees collecting nectar from different flowers. Spiritual, but not religious.
So
That's
you think that a lot of people who are coming up are searching? Are they searching?
Oh my God, yes. Young people, older people, they are tired of, shall I say, damaging theology, meaning theology which separates rather than unites. And they really want to get to the heart of how can I become a better human being? How can this give meaning in my life? How can I be of service, be a lamp, a lifeboat, or ladder? So we have the second one, spiritual but not religious. We have a third one, multiple belonging. So for example, we have a Christian priest, a lady, Dr. Ann Holmes Redding, who is also a Muslim, having two faiths. And people will say, wait a minute.
What?
It's like, how can you be true to two faiths? Well, she says, like a mother can have love for two children. Or in the American academic system, you can have two majors, or a major and a minor. And the last one is, secular humanists, atheists, agnostics. They want to come to our place to learn practices for meditation, how to forgive, how to be more compassionate, how to be a better human being. So that common thread creates friendship among the groups. Yes, there are disagreements, but because our goal is to become a better human being, they get resolved rather quickly.
Wow. So people would come what there would be different programs people might enroll in. Is it mindfulness or compassion, or
Well,
can you choose?
we have all kinds of programs. It's a very busy place. Our place is called Ground Zero for Interfaith. I mean,
Right.
there's any program in the city about interfaith, either we are initiating it or we are collaborating, participating.
Right.
So we have, every Sunday we have worship services, and we have a particular program about that. We have classes, we have events, we have divine feminine programs, Native American programs. So it's very busy with worship services, events, Islamic Friday prayers, programs after programs.
Wow. So an interfaith worship on a Sunday, how does that work? Are you bringing aspects of different traditions together in one service?
Very, very good question. So we have, through these years, we have been there since 1999, we have developed a template where the first Sunday, we invite an outside speaker. So for example, we invite you and say, Iain, tell us something about your organization. Or we want to invite people about whom we know very little, like the Wiccan tradition, the Jain tradition. We just had a professor of Taoism. So the first Sunday is outside speaker. Second Sunday is the other co-founder. I'm a co-founder. Reverend Karen Lingwis is also a co-founder. So she belongs to the order of the Whirling Dervishes. She's a Catholic, right, and she belongs to the Mevlevi order of the Whirling Dervishes. So she does a service on the second Sunday. Third Sunday is my Sunday.
Right.
Islam and Eastern traditions. And the fourth Sunday is universal worship. This is a Sufi program where we honor all the different traditions.
Wow. Okay.
So it sort of covers many traditions, and we get suggestions from congregation members who they recommend for them to come as an outside speaker.
And will the same people come every week to attend these worship services?
Good question. We have a fairly stable group, but we have a heavy turnover also.
Right.
Some people want to know, what is this about, Interfaith Community Sanctuary? And then another goal we have is to tell them, you can, while attending our sanctuary, you can be attending other houses of worship also.
Right.
And we say, our goal is to help you get rooted in a path that really works for you. Most of them end up staying with us, but some, like I've sent people to like Ted Falcon's synagogue. I say, maybe you belong there.
Wow. Right.
And they go there, or to my Christian friend, or to a Buddhist temple, or actually just to join Dances of Universal Peace. That's a Sufi program of doing prayerful dances of sacred tunes and songs. Some say, that's my community. I've had Catholics who've come to me and said, I'm, the famous term, I'm a recovering Catholic. Then after they come attend our service, I say, maybe I think what works for you is to go to the Dances of Universal Worship. And some of them have come and told me, Jamal, thank you. That really is my community. That is my path. I want to dance in life, like the Zen masters say.
That's incredible. So you're supporting people on their spiritual journey.
Absolutely. That's our goal. That's our goal. Yeah.
It's interesting. I always, when I speak to young people, I describe faith as like a sat-nav giving us direction. There are different routes that we can take, and these teachings can help us. I mean, that's fantastic. Your role as an interfaith minister there, is there a pastoral side to this as well? So do you have like a congregation that you're supporting? Would there be a similar role as to what your role as an imam would have been in a mosque, or is it quite different?
Well, we have Muslims. The majority of our congregation members are actually Christians, spiritual but not religious. But we have groups of Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims. We have Friday prayers. And yes, so I've been trained in Sufi psychology. And then in our group, we have psychotherapists, we have psychologists, we have marriage counselors, grief counselors. So we have a good collection of people who can offer services. So I see people much less these days because I'm busy doing presentations, I've done a lot of pastoral counseling. And these days, because of the pandemic crisis, via Zoom, some counseling.
Mm. Well, I was going to ask you that because obviously people are really suffering just now with COVID-19. It's a real challenge to people's faith. So how do you see your role during that situation? Are you helping more people are people wrestling with these big, struggles with their faith just now during COVID-19?
You mean how are they connecting with their faith during this time?
Yeah, I mean, it must be very challenging when we have so many innocent people dying around us.
Yes.
Are people searching to the sanctuary, or are they coming to you saying, I don't know what to believe. Why is God allowing all these innocent people to suffer?
True. It has, faith is being challenged in these days. But we have many stories to tell, from our holy books. For example, I give the example of Prophet Muhammad when he felt hopeless and helpless. And then God came and said, in a revelation, did God not find you an orphan, but help you, guide you? And the Quran says in times of helplessness, particularly, continue with two things. One is to be of service according to your capacity. And the other one is don't forget to do your prayers or meditations. As Rumi says, be in attendance at the divine court. So all of this really leads to one particular point, major point, that how strong is your faith anyhow? Is it just based on hearsay, or is it something which boils up from within? Like Tagore, that Indian poet Tagore says, faith is the bird that sings in the dark, knowing that dawn is coming. So we say, follow, for example, to Muslims, I will say, follow this guideline of the Prophet Muhammad in these times of difficulty, like this pandemic crisis. Continue being of service, continue with your prayers, and particularly focus on being of help to others and see what happens. So I have heard stories back from people saying their faith has been strengthened when they have genuinely focused on helping others.
Wow.
There's this, I may just tell you one story which is common to all the traditions. There is this pious person who travels the world and is so hurt and wounded because there is so much of pain, sadness, cruelty, oppression, afflictions. And one particular night, this pious person just breaks down and saying, God, do something, please do something. And that night in a vision, God comes and says, beloved one, I did do something. I created you. Wow. So that becomes a central message. Doesn't matter what your religion is, that may I just be of authentic service to the best of my ability.
Wow. That's just such a beautiful teaching to hear. So what about this notion of if God is an all-compassionate, loving being, that he wouldn't allow others to suffer at this time? How do you wrestle with that?
It's a very good question. Mostly, Iain, through silence. If you give any smart answers, like Rumi says, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment, But there's one story I'd like to tell you.
Yeah, please.
My own experience. I've had people who've come to me over the years who've said, I really want to do some work with you on one condition. Please never mention the word God, because they've been savaged. The one lady was incested. Another one, her daughter was murdered. Another person, an African gentleman whose father was thrown off the helicopter for political reasons. But here's my insight about the greater mystery. We don't know why bad things happen to innocent people. That's a great mystery. But for me, this is the greater mystery, that these same people who were so savaged, so mauled by life circumstances, please don't mention God, when they, over the weeks and months and years, have done the work of healing, of becoming more whole, more complete, these same people, batting 100%, have become ardent devotees of God, meaning they're always talking about God, 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 God. So much so when I meet them, they're talking so much about God. I remember that Sufi song, "Oh God, save me from all these God lovers.
Wow.
Because, and there's a very famous story in Islam about a Bedouin who was asked, "Do you believe in God?" And the Bedouin answered, "You mean the God who sent me poverty, afflictions, made me wander from country to country to country, but as he spoke, he entered into a state of ecstasy." So this God business is very, very mysterious.
Mm. Can I ask, how do you yourself nurture your own faith then? I mean, it's quite a difficult time when people must be pouring out their pain and their sorrow to you.
Yes.
How do you find the time to
Thank you for
just
asking.
find that?
Besides prayers, Islamic prayers, I think silence is a very beautiful way. I love the words of Rumi, who says, at all times, particularly in times of difficulties, we're like fish thrashing and quivering on the banks. And we need from time to time to plunge into those oceans of silence, of renewal. So I do a lot of silence. I spend as much time as I can in nature. That is very healing, very, very healing. And also, I think, most of all, I think community, Iain. We have really developed, and for myself and as best for others, what we call a circle of love, where we have this group of people who really care and who are willing to be vulnerable. And that, most of all, I think, that circle of love is deeply nourishing and nurturing.
That's very beautiful to hear that. I mean, I've been inspired by what you've been talking about in Circle of Love and the community, and how you've been really, it's a place to support and nurture people's faith in their journey.